Hi, my name's Ian Fitzgerald. I've been involved in various governance roles for about 35 years in both small entities, SMEs, government, and large commercial entities, both here and overseas. The last 6 months or so, I've been thinking about governance in the age of AI, and I've been reflecting on a lot of the conversations, because technology is changing so rapidly, been largely about technology deployment, and I've been interested in this whole question about, well, actually, what does governance in the age of AI look like? And so I've been thinking about that, and so Mark, I was really happy to have a chat with you.
Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and as you just heard, today I have the absolute pleasure of spending time with Ian Fitzgerald and talking about governance in the age of AI. Rapidly changing topic, so I should probably start by saying we're at the end of 2025 here, so if you're watching this in 2026, things may have changed quite considerably. Uh, we chatted about this earlier, and when we talked about it, we realized, of course, there's an external view of AI and an internal view. So, if, for example, the AI's role in the boardroom itself being the internal view, and then the board's role in managing the impact of AI in the business being the external view. Maybe if we can start with the internal view and perhaps work through, I think you suggested the framework of using the Institute of Directors' 4 pillars. So, we'll take each of those pillars in turn and say, how does this impact it? So, how can AI tools be used in the board's role in determining purpose and setting strategy?
Yes, I think the issue when talking about AI, we're looking for AI to provide insights while the board applies judgment. So I think that's a really important thing, to think about. It's actually these are really powerful tools to give insights, but the board's still making judgment. So I think what it can do is strengthen governance by providing those insights, the foresight. Um, give an example in terms of nowadays. If you think of using the 4 pillars, if you start off with kind of strategy, these tools are really good at kind of scenario planning, really good for competitor analysis. I think what it does, it collapses down the time to do some of that basic research, which enables the board and management to have more detailed conversations. So I'm really interested. I think this is where some powerful insights come. And because it's collapsed with time, it means you can actually try different things. In the past, quite often it's quite a big task to go and do some scenario planning, do that, and then halfway through a strategic planning day, someone asked another question which went, oh, that really throws things out. Actually, well, those constraints are largely lifted. So I think that's for me. I think for boards thinking, okay, how can AI provide greater insights for us? We're thinking about strategy to enable the board to make better, more informed judgments.
Right. And the other thing you alluded to there was the speed of doing research. So if things change on the fly, you could quite quickly gather some more information to pivot in the conversation that you're having, whether it's a scenario planning exercise or whatever that may be.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's readily available these days to get away while you're talking. It's not uncommon for someone to be tapping away, trying to do a bit of research and boiling it down. And again, the beauty is come back with some sound bites of some issues to test them. That's really
Mhm.
quite powerful.
Yeah, right. The second pillar of in the idea framework is around effective governance culture. How can AI be used to help with that culture?
Look, I think I think the opportunity for AI, from what I've been using myself and observing, is I think AI can help boards learn faster and listen better. I think what I'm thinking is now is what enables you to do now. You've got the tools in which you can help yourself review and reflect on your board papers, the ability to think about meeting dynamics. And one of the things that's starting to emerge, and you can easily do, is if you've got an issue that you're trying to think about, and if you're either an inexperienced board member or quite an experienced, quite often is you can actually now do some role play with AI to say, I've got an interesting topic. I've got a particular view that may or may not align with my fellow board members. How might I start that conversation? You can do that in the safety of your own home. And I think that's a really interesting way by which actually people can reflect on it. You can use the note taking for that to reflect on the conversations. So I think that ability to think about um, debating with yourself, trying to understand what actually is happening, Therefore, I can learn more about the papers. These days, you can inquire with the use of various AI tools. You can actually inquire into the papers. You don't need to be asking all those questions to the board table. What you can think is actually, I've got my information. What I now need to think for the board. So what? So what does that mean for strategy? What does that mean for risk? What does it mean for action? It's a different kind of conversation. And equally, I think what's happening around this that sort of stuff, it's the same thing happening for management because they can do the same. They can put their papers through. So again, for me, what I'm finding in the entities that I am involved with using AI, it's helping the boards learn faster and listen better.
Now, in the first pillar, when we're talking about purpose and strategy, quite often we're asking questions about the external environment, we're asking questions about competitors. When we start talking about the sorts of things you're saying now about getting your board papers up there, reflecting on what's happened in the board meeting, you're really starting to deal with confidential information. There are a lot of people that are very concerned about AI being used as a learning tool and essentially anything you're putting into it becoming public domain. How do you deal with that?
So there's two ways to deal with it. So there is at one end of the scale, there are things like the big end of town where we're diligent and it's got an AI function, although it's reasonably clunky, but there's a tool there. There are other providers out there that can provide a secure environment for your information. But equally, a lot of the stuff can be, it doesn't have to be company specific. It's just a question, I've got a really difficult conversation, right? I'm relatively new to a board. Um, I've got this set of skill sets, but the board, has a different set of skills. How do I start that conversation? They are really powerful things. It just that coaching ability doesn't need to reveal company information. So I think
Right.
again, yeah.
So, two ways, as you say. One is there are secure AI tools where you can put confidential information in, but you want to be very, very confident that it's not being used in that way. And the other way is you can be very generic in some of your questioning and not put confidential information and still get really, really useful output out of it. Yeah, great. Thank you. The third pillar around holding management to account. How can AI assist with that function?
I think AI can kind of deepen oversight without necessarily adding to friction. There's always that tension between overreach by the board, it's eyes in, hands out. So look, I think there are some opportunities. And again, there is, if it's okay, I use one of those AI products at the moment. It's designed for boards, Tutaki. We've been trialing that for 6 months. It's a really interesting way about holding managed to account because what it does is you can get better data and better interrogation reports. You can highlight anomalies, surface questions, and I'll give you an example whereby I use the Tutaki product, and again, there are other products out there, but just that one in which you get your board pack, you can go through, it can produce a summary for you. It can actually then, when you're going, actually, we've discussed this topic before. When did we last discuss it? And actually, if you've got a history in the pack, you can actually that was the March conversation. And I'm finding that's really interesting having across multiple boards. Often was dealing with the same topic, but you go in, it's a slightly different angle with each entity. So actually go, okay, I can now recenter. Right. Yeah, we were talking about that labour market issue, so and so, but actually this was the context as opposed to my other entity. That's actually really useful.
Right, and
But
that
I'm finding that ability to deepen oversight because actually what I can do is I can ask all my questions. AI is really patient. I can keep asking, keep asking. Um, it's really useful. I mean, the other thing I've also done as an aside is in two of the entities we're using this product, I've got an informal arrangement with the chief executives, is that they load their board papers the day before, the board won't touch them. They can then run that all through the AI. They can actually test it. And actually, that's actually really again, that's the thing is it's not about better questioning to catch management out. It's the learning episode for both. So actually, then we get what information do we need?
Right, so that's an example of where you've got one of the AI tools that has got all the security in place, so you can put confidential information in. And I take it you're reading your board packs, you're doing all your background homework, but then the AI tool becomes very, very helpful in terms of interrogating it. As you say, when have we talked about this before? And if you've got 2 or 3 years of board pack history, it may say, well, spoke about this 2 years ago, and then you'll be able to interrogate with questions like, well, what's changed? Well, what were the factors that led to the decision we made at the time and what's changed in the meantime to make us lead us want to make a different decision. Yeah, and I guess for the CEO, they'll be able to whack it up into a tool and say, what questions are the board likely to ask me? That would be the first question I'll be using.
And equally, I encourage uh, management to run, and again through the Microsoft products, you can run a draft board paper within a safe environment. Get it summarized. Ask say if you got this summarized by AI when you're writing the paper, is that the message I really want the board to get?
Yes.
Is that really what it? Well, okay. And then comes the question, it's okay, so how much of that information does the board actually need to wade through, or can you write it better? I think that's a really interesting one about the beauty of this tool. You can load reasonable amounts of data, but actually it can then digest it in more easable chunks, give you better
Yeah.
insights.
So hopefully we might have fewer of the 200 or 300 page board packs and more shorter board packs because we'll have AI to help the CEO and the executive team write shorter and more succinct board papers.
I think so. And what I think was we may have some richer data, areas of which data which you can just interrogate. That's fine. You don't
Mm.
need to wade through the paper. You can just ask the question. What is the
Great.
sales trend over the last 12 months?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
You pick up
Yeah.
the phone and ask the CFO.
Right. So then the management team, the executive, aren't trying to second guess what information the board members want. They can give them access to a broader range of information and let the board ask their own questions. That's really
That's
powerful.
what I'm finding in the two entities I'm working, that it's just, as I say, it's making it, I mentioned before, I think we are learning faster and we're listening better.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. The fourth pillar from the IOD is around risk management and compliance. How can AI tools help here?
Look, I think for me, what I think to get value, I'd think of AI as giving the opportunity to give the board a second set of eyes. What it's good at. AI is really good at pattern recognition, so it can actually cross-check data. It can have a look at things. It can reveal blind spots. I think it really can help you ask the question. So what have we missed? I think that is really, really, the gain. As human beings, we kind of struggle to handle when the 3 to 5 big facts at a time. AI can do that and digest it down. Again, give another example with having used the AI tool recently at one of my entities, which we're using the AI, one of those AI tools. I asked the question, so what are the recurring issues and themes we've been debating around the board table for the last 2 years? Which was quite revealing. And kind of going, okay, we've seen there were a couple of issues that just keeps recurring. And the other one I kind of went was, and so how many of those we actually resolved according to the minutes? And then that's going, they made me sit back and think, okay, there are a couple of issues here that actually, which maybe then reflect actually why weren't we resolving them? What was it? And that led to quite a different conversation around the board table. Again, that's
Right.
the power of these things about risk and compliance. It's a second set of eyes on what your blind spots are.
It almost feels like for my own use of AI and in fact in the governance bites, I have a number of prompts that I've saved into a Word document so that I know if I want to reuse something, I can just copy and paste the prompt. And it almost feels like you build up a library for these kind of review things. What have we missed? What are the things we've been talking about for the last 2 years? Uh, it feels like you could build up a library of those prompts, and then once a year, it could just be a hygiene factor. We pop those prompts in and re-ask the same questions. Um, I've often thought if in some roles, in fact, I could start doing this in my own role now. I have a Monday morning question that I pop into one of the AI tools and say, what are the issues that I should be thinking about this week? It takes you 2 minutes to read over them. Actually, that's a good point. So you only need one little highlight from that question for it to have pulled out some value, right? So yeah, really,
Okay, it's a very patient second set of eyes that would just identify. Again, it's a pattern recognition tool, right?
yeah,
That's the really power.
absolutely, yeah. Now, moving on a little bit about risk. When we chatted earlier, you directed me to a 2012 piece of work from Kaplan and Mike's, uh,
Yeah.
where rather than the traditional ISO model of take each risk and rate it by likelihood and impact, they described it as three different types: preventable risks, strategic risks, and external risks, and said that they should be treated differently. Can you give us a bit of an overview of those three types of risks and what they mean?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, the reason why I think it's important for me, I'm finding it. Step back a bit. I think the issue around AI, it's so all encompassing and it's quite nuanced. And I think, the bit is there is no single answer, there's no single use, there's no single problem, no single benefit. So I think in the risk lens, I find the Kaplan Mike's model quite useful because it breaks apart, as I say, you mentioned that preventable risks, which are things which are internal, controllable, strategic risks, which are the ones you consciously, deliberately take, and external risk outside your control. So, what I think when I use that lens, I go, okay, when using AI, um, can it help us improve controllable risk or preventable risks? Does it create some additional risks that we actually need to think about controlling? Um, Strategic risks, again, they're deliberate risks you take to create value. Again, I think AI is a useful tool to help you do that scenario planning, strategic planning about actually here's some risks and how you might do it. And the other one is external planning, which in their model does scenario planning. I mean, these are the risks, best way to describe it, these are risks you just have to endure or build resilience against. They are against, you can't control them. That, if you're involved in international trade, importing, exporting at the moment, there's a whole lot of external risks that you can't control, but you need to endure them or you need resilience to manage your way through. So actually, that's where I think that for exploring our AI, how that might help us think about that. So for me, it's just a message I think is actually there are existing governance tools to help you unpack this. And I just think the way the Kaplan Mike's model, it breaks risks into some different components, which you can have different conversations around preventable, strategic, and external risks and use it differently.
Right. And I guess one of the other great uses for AI, as you say, it's a tool of pattern recognition and asking it, these are some of the risks we've identified. What have we missed? So
Mm.
it can be very helpful in terms of creating that library of what risks exist. And you've already suggested as well about managing risks. So as you say, you got your internal risks and you have your controls in place. Very easy to ask AI, are there any is there any residual risk that we should have be dealing with that our current controls are not going to capture? So there's really useful ways that you can use those AI tools to improve your existing risk identification and risk management. Hmm. Yeah, cool. Um, what risks should boards consider before adopting AI tools in the boardroom? So, we've talked about Tataki and Diligent and some of the other tools that have got the AI. You've got just general LLMs, Notebook. You've got many people will be using Microsoft 365, so they might have access to Copilot. Before the board goes, oh, these are great, let's just chuck our information. And what are the sort of risks they should be considering and how do they manage them?
Well, I think it comes back from a governance point of view. The board's role is to set the guardrails for the use of AI. So, um, again, there are many different uses and styles of AI being used. So, I think again, the board needs to be really clear about we understand. So, we understand the difference between a tool that's addressing workflows as opposed to a front end chat tool. And again, try and understand there are very simple tools that actually are there to public facing as opposed to back end workflows, as opposed to tools to improve productivity. So I think the board needs to go, okay, we're the board's responsible for setting the guardrails. So we need to understand, weigh up the data privacy, security issues, bias. I think board members need to get enough understanding of the different types of AI, when and when to use it. So I think there's that. They need to understand the due diligence around both the return and deployment risk. So again, you need to think about that. And also, AI largely, if it's deployed in a significant, it's an organizational change issue. And what's coming common around I often hear about failed AI deployment. Talk about the last half mile as a problem, which is just at the end of the day, organizational change involving people. And you need to get that right. It's the technology might be fine. So look, for me, I think the risk of adopting AI at the boardroom, I think they are pretty manageable because you can wrap yourself. I think the risk for the board is saying, actually, what is our risk appetite and what are the guardrails this organisation needs to apply? And it's not universal. It'll apply different from your back end processes, your customer facing, and tools that staff can use.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about AI is it's a very big hammer and there are a lot of nails around. There are so many different use cases for AI, and it's a matter of prioritizing and determining which ones to jump into and which ones will add the most value to the business. Is there a risk that some businesses may move that the business may move too slowly in its adoption of AI?
I think again that comes back to, yeah, I think you need to. We're talking about the external view, but I think that the risk again is to break it down. It's not a single thing. AI is not a single thing. ChatGPT is just a simple chat, front end chat that allows you to use natural language to talk to a large language model. That's quite different from a major back end product that you're building. So
Mhm.
again, I think, again, to think about your external risks, I think, what I think about disruption, are you in an industry where you're going to be like Uber, which destroys the taxi industry? Or are you going to be an Airbnb, which is just diversified and enrich the hotel accommodation?
Mhm.
It's the vibe, kind of where is it? It's not all doom. So understanding where you are in the market, understanding what it might mean, um, what parts of your business might be susceptible to change. And I think
Yes.
that is, so it's a question of actually board members need to start understanding what AI is, needs to think how it applies to their market. They can use AI to help them. That's the
Mhm.
beauty of these tools to, you can just jump on any of these tools and ask all the dumb questions there and start to learn.
So
But I
we
think
have switched to the external view, which is great. In terms of this external view, what are the timeframes that businesses should be considering when they're considering the impact of AI on their business?
you've got to think about it. This is a long game. You need to plan beyond one cycle. This is I'm reflecting now. This is my fourth technology movement. I'm old enough where we moved from mainframe to laptops, the internet. From the internet, we then went to mobile, and now we're looking at AI. These are long-term changes, which have both short-term impacts and long-term. So I think you need to be looking through what are the near-term efficiency gains and threats that will be coming along versus the long-term business model shifts that you need to think. So you need to be thinking about this as an organizational change journey, and it's going to go through several strategic cycles. I think that is probably the question which comes back to around it's not a short-term issue, but you do need to understand what the short-term, there are some short-term risks, which come back to your earlier question around um, the risk or not. I think you really need to you can't leave it too long to do your assessment. Can't wait and hope. You need to work it through. For some industries, it's going to be quite powerful and quite quickly. Others, it's a long way away. It may just simply be you're changing the way whether you're using Microsoft Office to Microsoft 365 Copilot. They're profound, but it's not a business change. Others will fundamentally change their business models.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, given all of these opportunities and all of these risks, do you think, or how do you think AI will change governance?
Previous view, I don't think it will. I think what it is actually, as I say, a lot of the discussion now, because it's the deployment of technology, become quite technology deployment type conversations. For me, I think governance in the age of AI hasn't changed. The business, the tools are the same. So what I found useful by thinking through AI governance through the four pillars lens allowed me to unpack about strategy, culture, holding to account compliance, using the Kaplan Mike's model, a model for me around preventable, strategic, and external risks. When you think about deploying AI, think about a due diligence lens, both in terms of return and deployment risk. So I think there are plenty of tools we've got. It's a big issue, needs to be dealt with. But again, take our time. We can manage our way through it. Use existing tools. I don't think it requires anything different, but it requires board members to be prepared.
Right. So fundamentally, artificial intelligence isn't looking to change governance. It is a series of tools that can enhance governance, make it, faster, more effective, great learning tools and things involved, but doesn't necessarily change governance itself.
No, I think it provides insights. Boards still have to make judgments. Second set of eyes, boards still need to make the judgments.
Yeah, you think we're far away from having an AI director in the board table?
I think again, with some of these AI tools effectively do. I think the question is, what do you mean by an AI director? The question is, you can have AI. It's a bit like saying we're going to have pencil and paper on the board. It's a bit of technology, it will be there. But again, the question is, so what is it? If you're looking for a tool that provides insights to help you make better judgments or strategic decisions, yeah, absolutely, it'll be in the boardroom.
But it'll be some time before
The other
this.
thing which I think is starting to emerge, is a really interesting one around, I digress, is around, the use of paper and document. Is the document going to be a fixed thing, or is it an interactive artifact? Whereby what it is, the information, as you keep asking questions, you get different answers and there's feedbacks. Is that a better way to make board decisions? That's in early days. I think that's the question about actually how we manage our board meetings might change. But the principles of governance don't change. The 4 pillars, I don't see changing.
No.
Risk models like capital mix, don't see changing. Due diligence models, I don't see changing. How they're used might be different.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you raise around dynamic information for the boardroom, because ultimately, a lot of that information is discoverable, right? And so if you've got a static suite of documents, you can go, there you go. These are the documents that were used to make these decisions that this board has been using. If they become more dynamic, that will become far more challenging with potentially, some critic, whether it's a legal challenge or whatever it may be, saying you had this information available to you to make this decision in this way. Why didn't you? So we didn't interrogate it in that way as an absolute possibility. So there could be some risks there. That's an interesting consideration. Moving away from AI with a general question just to finish off, what advice would you give to a first-time chair?
Look, in relation to AI, I think it's about stay curious, build understanding amongst the board members, and stay strategic. I think the bit is an AI, make a distinction between the organisation deploying AI. There's a lot of detail that has to happen. That's a management function. But at a board, if you think just what's the board governance, I think it's about keeping the discussion strategic rather than technical. Use familiar tools like the 4 pillars, Captain Mike, due diligence, all those sort of things, and treat it as an organisational change process, which largely involves, at the end of the day, the last half mile people.
Ian, thank you very much again for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You've given me some incredible things to think about. So I hope we can catch up again soon, perhaps in person one day when you're up here or I'm down there. And we'll look forward to seeing you next episode.
No, I enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favourite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.